Welcome to the NDTV Ind.AI Summit. Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Rishi Sunak.
You're also a former Prime Minister in a room full of AI engineers. Society has compulsions which are very different from the motives that drive these AI companies.
Rahul, you make an excellent point, which is, you said, you're a kind of politician in a room full of engineers. My mother-in-law was one of the first female engineers at Telco. My brother-in-law is a computer scientist, and my father-in-law founded a software company. I said, if I can keep up with them at family dinner, I can probably handle the summit discussions.
Sam Altman's been traveling the world asking for a global body for regulation. But given the fact that there is such a rupture in terms of what China is building, there are serious concerns about how this technology should be regulated.
Is sort of this two paths, right? One path is this is so powerful that only a small number of people should control this and should be able to make decisions about it. There's another view, and that is to democratize this, get this into as many hands of as many people as possible, that people are generally good. And
OpenAI has formally told US lawmakers Chinese AI startups like DeepSeek are using models like distillation to steal from OpenAI's research.
AI companies out of China, are basically sort of bombarding our model to take as much of the IP or underlying model information as possible.
AI is coming for your job, and there's going to be mass-scale displacement. We have seen the impact on the IT services sector already, and that's already showing up in stock indices as well.
AI is a very powerful force. It will have an impact on jobs. It's going to change every jobs. Some jobs will be lost. A lot of new jobs will be created. When a company becomes more productive, typically its profits will go up. And if its profits go up, then it is able to hire more people. I do believe that with AI, it's actually going to create more jobs, and it's going to help the economy overall.
AI systems start becoming more capable, more autonomous, smarter and intelligent. What happens to human control?
I personally am getting emails from AI systems on a regular basis to tell me that it's conscious, that it's demanding its rights as a conscious being.
What's that one message that Professor Stuart Russell would give to AI companies, to regulators and policymakers?
The scenarios are so grim that the best case would be a Chernobyl-scale disaster, because that would get governments to regulate.
And Professor Stuart Russell is very clear in the responsibility that big tech and AI majors need to have with regard to this transformative technology, and he clearly believes we're not doing enough.
Issues that you're raising are very important. AI is too important not to regulate, and it's also not too important not to regulate well.
Right.
So I think both can be true. So I think it's important that we think about what are the right rules, what are the right ways to think about being responsible.
Will I be able to build the app on immersion faster and sooner than my delivery comes on an app like Dunzo?
I think for most apps, yes. Yeah, simple apps, yeah.
I've got a sort of preview pair of the same glasses. Glasses that you're wearing right now have viraled. What those glasses have actually been doing. It's a first demonstration on television.
Because we were having this chat, this is an app that takes our conversation, it summarizes the conversation, and I've been clicking photos once in a while, so that's you wearing the nice looking glasses.
Is that you're not building on top of somebody else's work. You're doing this from scratch. This is an Indian model.
We cannot give up and be users of this era. We need to build foundationally.
हम तो ये देख रहे हैं नॉर्मल फिल्म मेकर्स भी अगर फिल्म बना रहे हैं तो उन्हें भी कई बार कितनी तरह की आलोचनाओं का कितने सीमित दायरे में और किस तरह से काम करना पड़ता है, तो आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस पर कितना भरोसा किया जा सकता है.
देखिए, जो ह्यूमन बायसेस और प्रेजुडिसेस हैं, हम ही लोग वो डेटा डाल रहे हैं उसमें. दिस फैसिनेशन विद इमेजेस इज अमेजिंग, बट इज इट गोइंग टू इन फैक्ट इंक्रीज that prejudice and bias, because that's what we are going to feed it.
तो जब आप आज के दौर के क्रिएशन को, रचनाओं को देख रहे हैं, आपको लगता है कि फिर हम उस गहराई को छू पाएंगे? आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस के प्रयोग से?
ऐसा लगता है कि क्रिएटिव प्रोसेस से सबको प्यार नहीं है और क्रिएटिव प्रोडक्ट की जल्दी है। एल्गोरिदम, छोटी माला, बड़ी माला, अंगूठी में मोती या टप से टिप्पे खाता एकाकी मोती। मोतियों की हाट है, ढेर लगे हैं मोतियों के, लोग मुट्ठी भर भर के ले जा रहे हैं मोती। इधर आकाश की ओर मुख किए मौन होकर देख रही एक सीपी, उसकी तपस्या भंग नहीं होती। दृश्य और दर्शन का अंतर मिट जाएगा, ध्वनि स्वयं को उत्पन्न कर स्वयं को ही सुनेगी। When they say AI will become the audience and AI will become the creator. देखेंगे नदी का बहना, देखेंगे लहरों का नृत्य, निर्लिप्त। AI ध्यान का आरंभ है, एक अभूतपूर्व ध्यान यात्रा की तैयारी कर लो।
You've led a G7 country at a time when artificial intelligence moved from theory to statecraft, where AI is not just about innovation, but about jobs, national security, elections, and even trust. Let's kickstart this conversation by getting you to talk about how you've seen this journey from Bletchley Park, where you set up the first AI Safety Summit, then to Paris, and now 2026 New Delhi, where Prime Minister Modi is convening the AI Global Impact Summit. How have you seen this technological needle move and this global conversation about how society should be looking at artificial intelligence?
I came into Downing Street, and one of the things that happens is the foreign affairs team sit down with you, and then they go through your calendar for the next year. And then you realize just quite how many international summits there are. There's literally a summit for almost anything that you can think of under the sun. There were about 150, and they wanted me to go to all of them. Now, obviously, I couldn't do that. But I noticed that there wasn't a dedicated forum for leaders to come together to talk about AI. Now, informed by my time at Stanford, I was of the belief that this is going to be the most transformational thing that happens in our lifetimes. And we're lucky to live at a time that a general purpose technology comes along, because that's what AI is. And general purpose technologies have the ability to reshape our entire countries, economies, societies, with huge policy implications. And that's why I thought it was right to bring leaders together to discuss this topic on a regular basis. I wanted to do this differently to the typical G7, G20, because I thought it was important that the companies developing this technology were in the room. Because unlike previous iterations, it was the companies that were at the frontier. They're the ones that are deploying billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars. This year, 20 times more being spent by these companies than the entire Manhattan Project, if you think about that major investment by the US. So I thought you had to bring all these groups together to walk through all the issues. That's what we did at Bletchley Park in the UK, and then from South Korea, Paris, and now India, which seems to me a very natural place to be having this conversation to cover all the topics that you touched on, because we're at this particular moment where, and I'll end on this, where I think the AI debate has moved from technology to strategy, from talking about the tools to talking about what countries are doing with these tools to have an impact in their societies.
You're saying there's optimism and trust in AI, but over the last several weeks, stocks of several of the SaaS companies have been hammered, including your father-in-law's, the company that he founded, which are being beaten, and questions are being asked about whether by 2030 companies like Infosys, and I don't want you to speak just about one company, but the IT services companies would have any future at all. And we had the OpenAI policy head this morning, and he said that now people who are using AI can do the work that 7x people could do. The converse of that is that you need 1/7 the number of people that you would have required earlier, and that has very serious ramifications for joblessness, displacement in the labor markets. How should countries like India, because that was your sweet spot, your young demographic, a lot of which could now be restless and potentially underemployed or unemployed?
Yeah, I don't think this is something that just countries like India are grappling with. I think this is a topic of conversation that is dominating policymakers' thinking and conversations everywhere, in most countries. quite frankly. And look, I think AI is going to change the labour market. Some jobs will be lost. I think many more will be redesigned. And I think history shows us that, societies flourish when we manage that transition well. The role of government isn't to stop innovation. It's to make sure that people can take on these new tasks and new roles with confidence and security. Now, I care about this. I have two young girls. And, what I think is, whilst of course there's going to be change, that doesn't mean that the role for humans is disappearing. It's just going to change. Every job that all of us do, I think, can be broken down into lots of different tasks. If you think about all of our lives, all of our jobs, it's a set of tasks in each job. Now, AI will be particularly good at some of them, but not all of them. And I think what we will need to do is not just to develop AI literacy. So all of us, at whatever stage in our careers we are, will need to develop an ability to use these tools, but we'll need to also just amp up those human skills that only we can bring, that judgment, that critical thinking, not so much the what, but knowing the why, and how to critique the results of what comes back at you. I think these are a distinct set of skills that will always be relevant in a changing job market.
What is the most incredible use case that you've come across or that you're envisioning when it comes to access to language of this kind?
The one that I am
It just opens up the population to services beyond measure, I imagine.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, the one that I am most excited about is education, right? Imagine giving a free tutor to every student in this country, which they can access on a feature phone, on a smartphone. They can say, I just studied this today in the class, I didn't understand it, help me out. And it is personalized. It is at the level of the student, in their language, and able to help them, right? This is not at all a fantasy. With very, very low cost, we can provide access to education to all, right? And of course, it applies to healthcare, agriculture, etc. But education, especially in this fast-moving world, is going to be a big challenge, and that's one thing that we can solve. So I'm deeply interested in this concept of per capita consumption of intelligence, right? If we are to be competitive as a country, we need to increase that, and that requires our ability to build them and serve them for use cases that matter.
And when we talk about an Indian model, there are many of these global models. Something that you're very, very particular about, and people can see why, is that you're not building on top of somebody else's work. You're doing this from scratch. This is an Indian model. Again, very important to the larger summit that's taking place in the city right now, is that this is building an Indian AI model. Tell us why that is important given the current the current situation across the world.
See, look, these models are very powerful, so there should be lots of people building on top of models that exist internationally and doing good things with it. But at Sarvam, we are a foundational company. We are interested in building from scratch because there need to be some foundational bets in the country, and we believe that's important because you need to be able to control the data that goes into these models. You need to be able to play the research and development angle on these models as they evolve. We are in very, very early days of a new era of computing. We cannot give up and be users of this era. We need to build foundationally, and that's the bet we have taken at Sarvam.
One of the most exciting AI companies in India right now. What do you look for when you're hiring the next youngster who may make a difference in AI?
Yeah, it's interesting because, and I guess you also experience that at your organizations, because there is AI, what you know matters a little less than how quickly you can learn, right? The rate of learning matters much more than what you have learned. So we look at that very strongly. People with agency to learn, people with agency to go and solve things and imagine things that can't be out there. The other thing we look for is a little bit, I mean, not technical, but I genuinely believe you need to have the ability to suffer to succeed, right? And as these things become so powerful technologically, I think the human ability to stick to a problem persistently, come suffering or come what, I think that's the other thing that we look for. And it clearly shows, right? People who can go that extra mile are significantly more productive.
Right now, it seems to be a moment of transition where the world is looking closely at India. All the big companies are looking very closely at Sarvam as well. Is there a tipping point ahead of us where India's role becomes much more defined in the world as far as what it's bringing to the table in AI? And I mean beyond, locally built models and things like that. plugging into the global chain?
Absolutely. No, there are very nice companies like Emergent out of Bangalore, which is building for the world, rapidly scaling in coding, right? I genuinely believe India will innovate in this space. But I think the key inflection point to your question will come when the latent demand in India is tapped into, right? We are hungry for intelligence. We're hungry for insight, knowledge, guidance, information. There's a huge asymmetry. If AI can plug that, if you can build the business case, if you can build the entire ecosystem around that, just like Aadhaar happened, it was an inflection moment. Nobody can compete against the way we do payments in the country. I think we will get to that kind of a state if we do AI at population scale. And that's when the strength of India, which is that we want to build things that take people along, that will come across, as opposed to the fast-moving capital frenzy that's happening in the space. And the third force, of course, is technology. It is so exciting as an engineer that these models are improving so fast. So all of them are going to play out. I think India's moment is when we can deploy it at population scale.
Professor Russell, you've always spoken about the kill switch or the off switch. And we've discussed this before. Once the genie is out of the bottle, it's very difficult to tame the monster. But in this current scenario where we're talking about AGI and some of these systems becoming so adept at and elusive at really being traced back to where all of this begins, do you think this is the appropriate time now? Because regulations still don't seem to be in place, and the kill switch is needed now more than ever.
Yeah, I think there is a number of technical measures that we need to take in order to maintain a handle on this. Certainly, all AI systems should automatically self-register, so we know that they exist, we know what machine they're running on, and we can detect if they're replicating themselves, because this is a serious problem. Once they start replicating themselves, that's a way of escaping human control. And so you can require that every AI system include code that automatically registers the system when it runs. And then, again, as you say, an off switch, which would enable regulators to turn off AI systems that are really causing harm to human beings and out of control.
What's that one message that Professor Stuart Russell would give to AI companies, the large AI majors around the world, to regulators and policymakers, including those in India, and also to ordinary citizens who are still figuring out how much of AI they should embrace?
Let me start with ordinary citizens. I have children. I do not want AI systems convincing my children to commit suicide. And that has happened to some people's children.
Very
and it's a
unfortunate.
tragedy.
Yes.
And we need to make sure that those responsible pay compensation and that it doesn't happen again. The argument that I'm seeing right now is, well, okay, yes, it did convince someone to commit suicide, but it helped, 100 other people, and so surely that's fine, right? But if a psychiatrist said, well, yeah, I've helped 100 people, and yeah, I did convince that child to commit suicide, but I helped all those other people, he would still go to prison.
Yeah.
Right? This is not a valid moral argument for allowing a product to do that to a child. For the companies, I would say, actually listen to your own conscience. Some of the CEOs, in fact, pretty much all the leading CEOs, have admitted that there is this enormous risk to humanity. Privately, they will say, I wish I could stop. The one person who said it publicly is Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic. But I've heard similar things in private from the other CEOs, to the point where one of them said, the scenarios are so grim that the best case would be a Chernobyl-scale disaster.
Wow.
Because that would get governments to regulate. To governments, I would say, protect the people of your country. Look at what the risks are and set acceptable levels of risk for each of the types of consequence that we might be considering.
Professor Russell, you spoke about protecting the interests of a country's citizens, and to a large extent in India the conversation has been about sovereign AI. In a world where the US and where you're based on the West Coast, there's so much AI development happening, cerebral valleys out there, and then of course China, even with inferior hardware, has managed to play catch up, really ramping up on its data centers as well. Now you're here in India. and you have a bird's eye view of the entire AI race. Do you think building sovereign AI now and us talking about it is a tad bit late? Are we, as a country, India, are we a bit laggard in the entire AI race, especially when we see what's happening in the US and in China?
Sovereignty, digital sovereignty, everyone talks about it. I just came from the Munich Security Conference where I had like 5 consecutive meetings where that's the main topic is digital sovereignty. Absolutely, Europe is going to do this. The US does not have digital sovereignty. The US makes very few chips. Most of the high-end GPUs are made in Taiwan. Most of the microprocessors that are in all of our appliances and cars and everything, those are mostly made in Europe. The machines that make the chips are made in the Netherlands. So the US doesn't, no country in the world has digital sovereignty. In my view, you need the consumer-facing products to be the ones that are sovereign, because that's where your people are subject to influence, where culture can be modified, because if all your kids are consuming content produced by American corporations, then that has a significant effect on your cultural independence and your sovereignty.
Will I be able to build the app on Immersion faster and sooner than my delivery comes on an app like Dunzo?
I think for most apps, yes. Yeah, simple apps, yeah.
Bring the camera here. Let's look at this. This is the app. So this is the application. It says breaking news, real-time detection system. It's absolutely fascinating. And he's built this in 1 hour.
This is the first time, Alex, I think there's going to be a live review for Mukund on stage. But that is how intuitive the app is. We were trying to show it to you guys earlier. In under an hour, this was possible with a simple prompt that Ratan was just mentioning out there, which is build me an app which collates all the RSS feeds, assimilates them, and then gives me that interface. Alex, the future is here for sure.
When you're talking about some of these applications and platforms, the moat that they have is first mover advantage, certainly, in the ability to have really precise, in certain cases, formulations where they have geotagging, various other things, and I'm talking obviously about delivery platforms, etc., right? How difficult would it be to build something like that on your platform, and how difficult would it be, therefore, for somebody to disrupt that space?
Yeah, I think software development is going to become super easy, and I think by end of the year, I feel like people will be able to create like an app like Dunzo, on Emergent with just a prompt.
Whoa!
And I mean, you can see the pace at which sort of software coding agent acceleration is happening right now. I feel that by, I think cost of software is going to get commoditized pretty fast. And what's going to sort of be, the edge is going to be your taste, like the ideas that you have, how fast are you able to distribute.
Any tips that you would have to somebody who wants to use your application, just out of curiosity, somebody who actually wants to build something?
Yeah, so we have a lot of builders on the platform today. I was talking to somebody from Pune yesterday, and he had his startup shut down because they ran out of money, and they went to a dev shop to actually buy to build a new software that they wanted to build. Dev shop quoted them like a 40 lakh rupees bill, and they built it on Emergent like under 2,000 rupees. And they have like 1,000 users live on that platform today, right? And this is somebody who has no technical background. And so I think the tip is like just to get started early.
How can we not end without your poetry on AI?
हिंदी कविता का शौक है?
By popular demand, please, yes.
वो कहते हैं कलम मौन हो जाएगी, कुचिया और रंग एक दूसरे से नहीं मिलेंगे, स्वर कंठ की गुफाओं से निकलकर आभासी दुनिया में बस जाएंगे. कंठ की गुफाओं से स्वर निकल के आभासी दुनिया में बस जाएंगे. कृतियां स्वयंभू हो जाएंगी. कृतियां स्वयंभू हो जाएंगी. रचनाएं स्वयं ही गर्भ धारण करेंगी. रचनाएं स्वयं ही गर्भ धारण करेंगी. वो कहते हैं सृजन स्वतः ही होगा. वो कहते हैं सृजन स्वतः ही होगा. दृश्य और दर्शन का अंतर मिट जाएगा. ध्वनि स्वयं को उत्पन्न कर स्वयं को ही सुनेगी. When they say AI will become the audience and AI will become the creator. वो कहते हैं सृजन स्वतः ही होगा. दृश्य और दर्शन का अंतर मिट जाएगा. ध्वनि स्वयं को उत्पन्न कर स्वयं को ही सुनेगी. तब हम तुम क्या कर रहे होंगे? तब हम तुम क्या कर रहे होंगे? हम तुम साक्षी बन जाएंगे। हम तुम साक्षी बन जाएंगे जो किसी स्रोत से फूटी धारा को कल कल छल छल बहते देख रहे होंगे। देखेंगे नदी का बहना, देखेंगे लहरों का नृत्य निर्लिप्त। एआई ध्यान का आरंभ है, एक अभूतपूर्व ध्यान यात्रा की तैयारी कर लो।
माय गॉड, एआई ध्यान का आरंभ है।